This is Mind Pump, right? Today's episode, we brought back one of our favorite functional health medicine practitioners, Dr. Becky Campbell, and we talk all about mold. Mold is actually a big problem. A lot of your health symptoms might be due to mold and you might not know it. So in today's episode, we talk all about that. So Dr. Becky Campbell put together a free quiz that'll help you determine whether or not you should test for mold. You can get it at Dr. Becky Campbell, so that's Dr. Becky Campbell, CampBell.com/mold quiz. Take your free quiz, see if you should test further. Maybe you were exposed to mold. Go check it out. Today's giveaway on YouTube, Maps Aesthetic. To enter to win, leave a comment below this video, subscribe to this channel, and then turn on notifications. If you win, we'll let you know in that comment section. This episode is brought to you by Intera Skincare. They have a hair regrowth product that is insane. I use it, and my hair was falling out like crazy. Stopped. My brother used it. It's growing back his hair. Lots of people are using it and reporting back. This is peptide-based therapy. It's not minoxidil. It doesn't block DHT like other drugs. This stuff actually works. By the way, they also have skincare products that are peptide-based. This stuff doesn't just make your skin look better. It actually does make it better. It makes it rejuvenated. Anyway, go check them out. Get yourself a discount. Go to enteraskincare.com. That's ENTERA skincare.com/mindpump. The code MPM gets you 10% off your order. Also, this month's program sale, MAPS Strong, MAPS Powerlift, both half off. If you're interested, click on the link at the top of the description below. All right, here comes the show. Dr. Becky, welcome back to the show.
Very excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
It's been a minute. How long?
I know.
Like a year.
Has it been a year?
Yeah.
Well, she came on with her co-host.
Yeah.
And I had an interview.
Oh,
with
that's
her.
right.
But like
You
3 or 4 years since the first time.
Since
That's
we got
right.
all of us.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
This one will be way better.
Yeah.
Obviously.
A lot more people pay attention to this. Yeah.
You know, I wanted you on because of the experience that my wife and I personally had, and you walked us through the whole thing. And you're very experienced in this, both because of your profession, but also because you have personal experience. Mm-hmm. This is the topic of mold.
Yeah.
So for the audience that doesn't know, we were living in one place, and there was kind of this like list of strange symptoms that were popping up especially for my toddler. Mm-hmm. And Jessica would have some symptoms as well. A lot of it resulting in kind of an insomnia. But my toddler was having gut issues and some skin issues, and we just couldn't figure out what was going on. You would have us do these protocols and it wasn't working. And then you had asked us to do a urine test to test for mold. Lo and behold, both my wife and I had mold present in our urine. And so you're like, okay, you gotta test your house. And we did. We had this company come in, very expensive process, thorough process, which kind of sucks. They came in, they tested, and they found mold throughout the house, in the walls, throughout the HVAC. I mean, everything. And we had to move.
Your floors. I remember you guys had buckling in the floor.
We had to leave and move. And within weeks, we saw a lot of the symptoms resolve. And now my toddler's gut health is like fine.
Yeah.
Seems to be totally fine. Took a little while, I think, because his body had to kind of get rid of, process the existing mold that he had in his system. But it was crazy. And then when I looked into it and asked you about it, like this is relatively common. So what's going on here? What are we looking for? What's happening? How common is this?
So I think it's important to note if you are doing protocols, right? If you just feel off, there's different systems of the body being affected, and you've maybe tried a gut protocol or you've tried changing your diet or different things and you're not getting better. That's with Aurelius, what was going on, right? We were working on this and I'm like, why isn't he getting better? And especially when I saw the skin issue, because I knew that was yeast related, which is very tied to mold. Mm-hmm. So that is when you have to start thinking mold. And so
that's when you start looking there.
That's when I start looking there, like with patients. You know, sometimes I'll work on the gut and I'm trying to work on the hormones and the diet and stuff first. And I'm like, they're not getting better. Why not? Well, it's the environment, right? And how much time do we spend in our homes or in your workplace? Like, it's not always your house. It could be your workplace. But when you start to have this issue where you're trying different things and you're not feeling better, then you have to start considering that you may have mold in your house. And it's about 80% of homes have previous water damage, and about 40% of homes have current water damage.
Wow.
So.
Okay. So and then in this area, it's quite common because of where we live and it rains, and especially where we were near the foothills. So now, as I went down this rabbit hole, I was seeing two camps. One camp was like, mold is everywhere, it's killing us, and then the other camp was like, yeah, mold is everywhere, it's not killing us. This is like, if you look for it, you'll find it.
Yeah.
So where's the truth with this?
So it's actually depends on how you respond to mold mostly, right? So it's like your genetic setup. So some of us are genetically predisposed to not tolerate mold. So we take in toxins, and this is me, right? I take toxins in, I don't push them out well. So I'm very sensitive. So
they build up quickly.
Yeah, they build up quickly, and then they don't leave. So that's going to be someone who's going to notice it first. But mold is going to affect everybody at some point, because I've seen like a husband and a wife, let's just say. The wife is very noticeably sick. She doesn't feel well. She's very sensitive. She's getting food sensitivities, chemical sensitivities, all these different things. The husband's like, I don't know what's going on with her. It's not our house. Our house is fine. But then he has a heart attack because it can cause myocarditis. So everybody's going to be affected. It just depends on your genetic pre-coding to see how fast you're going to be affected and if you're going to be symptomatic.
Or how it expresses itself.
Yeah, how it's going to express itself. But no one can really escape how dangerous mold is. And yes, there is mold everywhere. There's mostly mold outside. There should not be more mold inside your house than there should be outside. And that's one of the things that a good inspector is going to test. They're going to see, okay, you have this much mold outside, but why do you have way more inside? That's a problem.
Well, because I've always heard about black mold, from construction, and then what to look for and the signs of different types of mold. So even we would sort of let certain types of mold slide.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if in terms of like the different strains and things to look for and what the characteristics are in your house, because I'm sure that high volume of any mold is probably not good.
Yeah.
But is there some real egregious ones to look out for, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
And the other ones that are maybe less harmful.
So Stachybotrys is like the classic toxic black mold, and people tend to think if you don't have that, you're fine. That's not true. So what it is it's the mycotoxins that mold produces. So there's mold, and then mold, if it finds space indoors, it's like, ooh, I want this space. But other molds and bacteria try to get in too. So when that happens, that mold is going to start spitting out chemicals. So mycotoxins are those chemicals. There's other chemicals too.
It's to defend itself or its territory.
Exactly. Okay. It's like defending itself, but mycotoxins are getting in the air. We're walking through, we're inhaling mycotoxins. So it's more the mycotoxins that are the problem, because mold spores can get into the lung and you can actually get them back out. Like you can cough them out. That's going to be the classic signs you see, like stuffy nose, coughing,
like
allergy type symptoms, right? Mycotoxins get in through the lungs and then get into circulation, and they get everywhere because they're so small. Okay. So that's the problem. So you can have different types of mold, like Aspergillus, Penicillium, different types of mold, but they're going to produce mycotoxins. And so that's really what people are reacting more to, because it's like the chemical, like in chemical warfare, they're using mycotoxins.
Oh, they are.
Yeah. So that's how dangerous the mycotoxins are. It's not, some people might not respond poorly to mold, not to mention mold can be very hidden. It's hidden behind walls, it's under flooring, it's under carpet. It's more when it gets up, exposed, like in the air, that type of stuff, or in your HVAC and it's blowing into your house, like those different types of scenarios. That's when it becomes more of a problem for people.
How much do filtration systems like air doctors and things like that really help mitigate that? And are they worthless? Do they help some? Could it completely help it? And you have a house that has mold and you'd be fine just because you have that? Like, how valuable is a tool like that?
It's a good tool for when you're remediating. So it's not the answer. It's not the same as getting out of the environment.
Okay.
But one of the biggest mistakes remediators make is they don't clean the air. So you have to clean the air, and which is what the air doctor is doing. But you have to still get to the source.
Otherwise, it's like a Band-Aid, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's just like this constant thing, and you're still gonna get it yourself if you're walking through. But they're great. I mean, I have air doctors all around my house. So
So they're worth having.
they're a good tool. They're just not the one and only answer. And you should not do that instead of remediation.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. So when I did the mold test, there were 2 tests that I did. The first one, they mailed me like it was like a kit, and I'd take this like swath of, I don't know what it was, material.
It's the ERMI test.
Yeah, and I'd wipe things around the house and then send it in. And it came back, and it wasn't like definitive. It was kind of like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. And me, I'm kind of avoidant, so I'm like, we're cool. But my wife kept pushing it, and so then we went with another company that comes in, and they'll drill a hole in your wall. They'll test inside the walls. Throughout the whole house. This was like thousands of dollars.
I remember,
of a big deal of testing. And then when that came back, then they're like, oh yeah, you have mold all over. So the testing itself makes a big difference as well, because you could just do like a basic test and see.
When you did that test, is there like a scale?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, there is. So he did the test. He did the ERMI test. He sent it. He was like, I think we're good. He sent it to me, and I was like, no, you're not.
Yeah, because it had some signs, but
because you're right. So I was like, we're good, and I'm like, you're not, and then
half of it's feces.
And then so I was like, you really need to get an inspection, so the ERMI test is like a step 1. It's like, actually, I think testing your body is step 1, but as far as
we
the
had in our
house
urine,
goes,
so
and both of you had the same types of mold in your urine, so I knew it was coming from your house and it wasn't coming from here. So that's step 1. Then I say, okay, let's do an ERMI test and see if anything comes up, which it did. And then I'm like, now this is coming up. Now you have to know, how serious is this? Where is it? Can it be remediated? And what are you going to do, like, moving forward? So that's why you hired the inspector. And then they found a good amount to where it wasn't worth remediation, and it was like, let's just get out of here.
Yeah. So what are the typical symptoms? You mentioned kind of allergy-like symptoms, which we didn't really have. We didn't notice stuffy nose, coughing, which that seems obvious to me. Like if my kids are coughing all the time, then I'm like, okay, there's something in the air. What are some of the other symptoms that you can look for that can tell you, like, maybe you have some mold going on? Yeah.
So there's a lot of symptoms, and I'll actually link a quiz for you guys, your listeners, to take, because you have to go through each system of the body and go, this could be happening, this. So common symptoms are anything that seems like allergies. So stuffy nose, itchy throat, itchy ears, trouble breathing, that kind of stuff. I never had any of that, and I've been in mold twice. You guys didn't either. Other symptoms of more like mycotoxin illness is going to be brain fog. For me, it was like this anxiousness. It wasn't that I was anxious about something going on. It was like this internal vibration where my body was anxious, and I'm like, why is my body so anxious? And the house that I live in now, the first night I slept there, I felt this internal vibration. I'm like, something is off here. And was like a pretty new house, and I'm like, it can't be my house. And so you're going to have like brain fog, anxiousness, trouble remembering words. And then you're going to have, again, like the itchiness in the ears, the congestion, all that kind of stuff. Again, you don't have to have this. You can have trouble breathing, wheezing, different things going on in the lungs. Again, don't have to have this, even though that's kind of their first point of contact. Then in the gut, you can have like alternating constipation, diarrhea, bloating, just ulcers, just different things going on in the gut. And then you can have things with the skin. You can have different like eczema, or
just
Aurelius had like some
weird rashes.
You get those cherry angiomas. I don't know if you guys know what those are, but especially if you get those in the trunk, that's highly related to mold and liver issues. I'm trying to think what else.
Fatigue.
God, it's almost like getting to
definitely fatigue,
autoimmune issues.
Well, it can really lead to autoimmune issues too, or it can amplify autoimmune issues big time.
Is it because what it's doing is it's kind of the mycotoxins are kind of overwhelming the body's detoxification systems,
Yes.
and so you develop just this hypervigilant immune system, which can attack anything.
Yeah,
in the body.
and mycotoxins are lipophilic, so they love fat. So they get into our fat cells, they get into our nerves, our vessels, our liver, our brain. I mean, I've seen patients who were diagnosed with dementia, and it wasn't dementia; it was that they had mold.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
So they thought they had dementia, diagnosed. You fixed the mold issue.
Yeah.
Their symptoms are gone.
Their symptoms are
The brain
totally
fog was
normal.
that bad?
Brain fog. I can tell you when I was in mold before, brain fog was my worst symptom. Like I felt like I was living in a dream. I could not feel like I was in the now. You know what I mean? It was so weird. It was awful.
Wow. So I remember the first time you had mold. You told me this story, but I guess it was under your bed. Was it?
It was so it was coming in through a crack in the concrete, like a busted pipe, crack in the concrete coming up. There was a big picture. So this is important to note.
Okay.
So I was going through a very hard time personally.
Okay.
I was dealing with a lot of like relationship trauma stuff. And I decided I was going to move out. So I was already not feeling well. I moved in with my mom temporarily. So the room she put me in had a busted pipe under the bed. She had a picture stored in there. So this water was getting up into like with the picture. So causing this humid moisture, wet environment. And I was sleeping on that bed every night. And I would wake up and I would feel like I drank a bottle of vodka.
Oh my God.
Like a whole bottle of vodka. The next day I'm like, what? I was stumbling out of the room. I would get to where I could get to the couch and my mom had to drive my kids to school. Like I couldn't even drive. And I would stare where I knew the bathroom was, but I couldn't get there. Like that's how bad I was. But now, I just went through a whole remediation now and I'm not like that, but that's because I have all these things put in place now that I didn't have put in place at that time.
Like what?
Like really supporting detox pathways.
Okay.
Supporting detox pathways. I do the sauna religiously. And I've always eaten well, so that was already in place. But working on the trauma stuff, like doing breath work, doing meditation, always moving my body, different stuff like that, working on certain nutrient deficiencies and, staying away from certain types of food like gluten, etc. So I'm in a much better place now. Not to mention this last time I wasn't sleeping on it. It was in a room across the house. So it was a little bit better. But I definitely was just not feeling right. And I'm like, I know this feeling. This is mold. And once I got that brain fog, I'm like, this is mold. I've got to figure this out. So I did.
Wow. Define remediation for me.
Yeah. So remediation is when they come in, they find the mold. So I'll give you like specifics. So this time, I have this house. I smell, everything looks great. The walls are clean. Everything's perfect, right? But I smelled something in a closet. And I'm like, I could be like a dog, like a drug dog. You know what I mean? My sense of smell is crazy. Yeah. And no one else smelled it. But I knew, I'm like, this is a problem. There's something here. I had inspectors come out. They're like, yeah, your mold count's a little higher in this room, but like not really figuring it out. So I had a remediator come in, knock down. So that closet shared a wall with the bathroom. All the piping was in that between those two walls. So we took out the bathroom wall and the piping. Behind the closet wall was mold, like all aspergillus, like cladosporium, all this mold.
Before you even know for sure, you spent the money and had that knocked down.
I knew it was there.
Wow. That's crazy.
I knew. If you can smell something, it is there because mycotoxins don't have a smell. Mold sends out other chemicals like aldehydes, VOCs, and stuff. Those are what smells. But mycotoxins don't tend to have a smell. And if mold is behind a wall, you probably won't smell it. So the fact that I could smell something and the fact that we were tired and that I had brain fog, I was like, something's up and I'm just going to take this into my own hands and knock this wall down. And I'm glad I did because there was so much. Like it was when they knocked down the wall and they swabbed it, it was like too high to count how much there was.
Now, did you not just do a urine test to see if you had mold in your system?
Yeah, I did the urine test first. I had tons of mold.
Okay, so you were like, okay, there's definitely.
Yeah, and I was like, I know. But I was like, okay, is this just because I had mold before and I never fully cleared it? But I knew the numbers were too high because I had taken mold tests before and the numbers weren't that high.
So you had to have been exposed more recently.
So that sounds like that's this step one for the person who's listening. Going like, oh shit, do I have mold? Is like, go get a urine test first.
Yeah. So urine, if you have good kidney function. So there's different ways you can test for mold. And this is why we had you and Jess test because. But anyway, urine is my go-to. But if someone has really poor detox pathways, like their kidney function is not good, their liver function is not good, all that stuff, then I might test for different things in blood. Or
is that because they're not pushing it out through the urine?
Yeah, they won't push it out.
So they're not even detoxing it through the urine.
Yep.
Wow.
That's how bad some and mine were at one time. My detox pathways and a lot of my patients, like their detox pathways are so bad they can't even pee out the mycotoxins.
So step 1, urine test. Step 2, symptoms, then urine test, and then maybe blood test, and then from there, let's test the house.
Let's test the house.
Yeah. Yep. You know what sucks about this is it's expensive.
Yeah, it is.
It's not covered by homeowners insurance.
Obviously
it is. It is some of it. So here's what I've learned recently. So I'm always learning, and unfortunately, I'm always learning through my own
hard way.
Yeah. So the inspection is not covered, but the remediation is covered if you do it right. Like if you have a leak. Or if you have some reason that is not your fault that caused the problem, you need to use your insurance for the remediation. So my insurance covered my part of my remediation this time. And then they'll also, I had to gut my kitchen.
Also?
Because I had a leak, and this is a very common, which people don't know. I had a leak in my freezer and it leaked. We took the freezer, pulled it out, fixed the part, dried it out, but it had been 24 hours. It only takes 24 hours for mold to become a problem. So if you don't completely clear things out before then, you need to start cutting drywall. So we had a leak in the refrigerator. It sat for more than 24 hours. It went through to my son's closet.
Oh.
We pulled up the carpet in his closet. There was mold. So my insurance will pay a certain amount for remediation. So they came in, they cut out all the drywall that had mold behind it. They took out the carpet. They took out all the cabinets in my kitchen. And you have to have someone who's reputable because you don't want to start mixing up mold and having mold go onto your couch or wherever it wasn't really exposed to before. So they put these plastic almost tents up around the area, their containment, right, where they were working, and that you have to get someone reputable. But anyway, my insurance company covered that. And then I'm having my cabinets replaced and all that, and my insurance company will cover that too.
Oh, that's good.
But you have to do it the right way,
You know what's crazy about this is because when we moved, right? So we're like, oh, mold, let's get out of here, right? So we move, and then we tell Becky, hey, we're lucky. We found a place. Luckily, we were renting. We didn't own, so we don't have to deal with the headache of all that. And the landlord let us go because we had evidence that the house was full of mold. We left. Luckily, we found a new place. We were blessed to find a new place relatively quickly. We start moving in. And then Becky's like, make sure you throw everything away that's porous. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, mattresses. Wash all your clothes. Don't bring anything into the new house because you could bring mold from the old place into the new place. Okay. Now, have you had clients like that where they're like, we escaped the mold, and they just brought it to the next house?
Well, we tell them up front, we're like, listen, these are the things that can stay. So wash all your clothes, and there's certain things
and there's a detergent additive.
Yeah, that detergent additive we use. And then we're like, your couch, your mattresses, stuff that you really can't wash that's super porous, those mycotoxins get in there. And I just went through this. I had to throw out 3 beds, but I saved the dressers, so it just depends. And a good remediator will tell you too, you can save this. They'll treat it, they'll treat the certain things. But I've had patients who they did everything and they brought like one piece of furniture back in and then they started getting sick again.
God.
And I'm like, you got to get rid of that.
What a nightmare.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, it was rough
The gift that
because
keeps giving.
before we could bring
It's true, it
before
does.
we could bring the clothes in, we'd have to wash them
Yeah.
and specifically wash them, and then we could bring them in, and then we had to throw things away and spray things with a particular spray, and it was a whole ordeal.
It's a lot. It is. It's like my least favorite thing to tell any patient. But there are things you can do for your body to prepare to be okay. You know, like it can take you down or you can be okay. And that's kind of what I work with people on, is getting through it without really going under, you know.
Well, I imagine too, the positive side of this is, imagine the person who's suffering from like severe autoimmune. They got all these issues and they're dieting and they're doing gut stuff and they're doing all these things and they're not solving it. At least you get to the bottom of that with that.
It's an answer at the end of the day. Yeah.
Are there any statistics around, if a house is built before 1960, there's a 90% chance that you have it. If your house was built, like, do they have stats like that?
They do, and I can't like lay them out there for you, but I can tell you like older houses tend to have mold.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
you guys were older house, right? Yeah. Older houses, the way they were built, tend to be more likely to have mold. And then brand new houses that the way they're building them now, like I live in Florida, everybody's
Which is
moving
humid.
there, but also they're throwing up these houses in like 6 months, you know? So they're not like the ventilation is poor. They're right on top of each other. And all it takes is poor ventilation, humidity, which how many states have humid weather, and then like high carbohydrate type of things like drywall, you know, because the mold needs something to eat.
Oh, wow, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. So mold loves drywall. It loves anything that's pre-digestible. So like certain things it won't like concrete is harder to, you know, but you can have concrete if you have dust and humidity, you can have mold. But more likely it's going to be drywall, carpet, certain types of flooring, paint, you know, wallpaper, which wallpaper is come back like really big in the last 5 years.
Yeah. Is it the paste or the glue underneath it?
It gets behind it, and people they wallpaper their bathrooms, and then that humidity gets in there, and that's that space between the wallpaper and the drywall, which mold loves both, and it kind of settles in there.
That's why you got to turn on the
fan.
The fan in the bathroom when you turn on a hot shower.
Yeah.
That's the most likely place.
Yeah, they say because the steam goes up. I remember seeing that, and I've had places. Where
There's hotels that'll turn on automatically.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to a hotel
Yeah.
like that? Well, the fan will turn on automatically if it gets a certain humidity.
Yeah.
To prevent that. The bathroom's got to be in the kitchen and the laundry room, I would assume, are the most likely.
Yeah, because it's where all the water is, you know, so.
Wow, that's interesting. So supplement-wise, because you mentioned supporting detox pathways.
Yeah.
So these are the ways that your body gets rid of any natural toxins or
Anything,
toxins that it's exposed to. So
Water and sauna have to be the top.
So liver, urine, and poop are the three big ones that I'm thinking about. And, and so how do you support the body through all of this?
So so when I have a patient, let's say I know they have mold, before I'm going to go in and aggressively get this mold out of their body, I'm going to make sure they're supported. So number one, I'm going to make sure they're able to push things out. If you start going in and killing things and pulling things, but you can't get them out, that's going to make the patient very sick.
Is that the Herxheimer effect?
Herxheimer reaction, yes.
Reaction. Okay, so you go in there, you treat them with something, antimicrobials or whatever, to kill whatever mold or whatever. But if they don't have the ability, what you're saying is that could overload their system even more.
Big time. It's like a bucket, right? And we've talked about this with histamine and stuff before when I've been on here. But, you know, if you can't push out, you shouldn't be going in and killing. It's just going to recirculate and it's just going to mix everything up. Because when you kill something, like let's say bacteria or fungus, which mold is and yeast is, and they're very tied, then they start releasing toxins. That's what happens when you kill it. Those toxins get into the bloodstream, they make you feel very sick. So you have to make sure that the person can push things out before you start attacking them. So the first thing I start very basic. I work on, I'm like, you know, let's start breath work. Let's start movement. Let's start, really gentle detox, because a lot of people with mold illness are very sensitive. You can't go in there and be like, start taking all these supplements. They'll feel terrible. So, of course, I love the sauna if you can do the sauna, because the sauna not only pushes toxins out in the sweat, but it brings a lot of circulation to our organs of detox, right? So that's really important. You can do things like rebounding, jumping on those little trampolines that people are doing. That's moving the lymph. Dry brushing, moving the lymph. Castor oil packs over the liver. That's for really sensitive people. Once you're not that sensitive, then I'm like, all right, let's get into like milk thistle, N-acetylcysteine, glutathione, which is the master like antioxidant, glutathione. So
do you work with a supplement or like
I do supplements.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do tell people, if you can get IV, glutathione is great via IV. If you're not, some people don't tolerate it well, but most people are pretty okay with that. And also, but you have to work with the limbic system, so our body remembers. And when people are sensitive, your brain develops a fear over things. So if you took a supplement and you have a bad reaction, you're going to start developing this fear of taking any supplement. So that's how sensitive of people I work with sometimes. So I have to have them do like limbic system retraining, working on the vagus nerve, like just calming the body down.
Well, pause there. That's interesting. So, and that makes a lot of sense. So somebody who has lots of bad reactions then starts to develop, it's a form of trauma around that method. And the body then can react. Yeah. This reminds me of when I would train a client who would have an injury, and the injury was in some way catastrophic. They couldn't play their favorite sport anymore, or they had to stop doing something they really loved. And then they would develop fear around movements around that, and oftentimes feel almost like phantom pain in those areas because of it. I've actually experienced, I had one client in particular where she had shoulder pain and it prevented her from swimming. She was a high-level swimmer, loved it, had to stop. We worked on correctional exercise. I mean, it got to the point where it's like, there's nothing functionally wrong with your shoulder. The pain didn't go away until she went and worked with a therapist and a bodywork specialist. And she had to deal with oh my God, that was really traumatic for me. My shoulder, and then all of a sudden the pain went away. Yeah. It was the weirdest experience. It was the first time I'd ever seen that.
Yeah. It's how it works with so many things, especially when someone becomes very sensitive, which I can say like probably one of the big trademarks of mold illness is being really sensitive. Like you get sensitive to smells and foods, and you just kind of feel like, what is going on? Why do I feel so crappy? Why am I set off so easily?
These are like people who they'll smell perfumes or chemical smells, and it'll just...
Chemical sensitivities, because their body's so overburdened already. You take in that, chemical, whatever, someone's cologne, perfume, and you're just like set off.
What does limbic work look like?
It's a lot of meditation, breath work. Okay. It's kind of like
so basically the kind of work that would put you in a parasympathetic.
Exactly. Or activating that vagus nerve. So you want to do that rest and digest, because when you have mold illness, you're in that sympathetic overdrive. So everything seems like a threat to you. So you're fight or flight all day long. And so we want to try to like calm that down, get you feeling calm and feeling safe and feeling like you can try things. And then you want to start adding certain supplements. You want to do things like DHA, fish oils. It's very good. Because mold is lipophilic, you can actually dilute mold by adding more healthy fats in the body. You want to do things like quercetin, because quercetin is very mast cell stabilizing. So our mast cells are the cells that come into high alert anytime there's like a foreign invader.
This is good. By the way, quercetin, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a great supplement for people with seasonal allergies.
Allergies, histamine intolerance, mold illness, COVID. It was big with COVID.
Yeah.
So, so you want to do that, like bioflavonoids. You want to do glutathione, because it's like I said, it's the master antioxidant. Melatonin is really good because it's a good brain antioxidant, and with the brain fog that everybody gets with mold, it can be really helpful. But you have to be careful, because melatonin in general can give you brain fog. So you just have to kind of start slow and expect that you're going to feel a little like it makes you sleep really hard.
I had a client once, and this was my first experience with it, and I almost didn't believe this was the like what happened, but I did see it with my own eyes. She struggled with weight loss for a while, and she would kind of generally be inflamed. And, you know, at the time I was more of the meathead trainer, like macros, calories, exercise. And it was just like this last 15 pounds that wouldn't come off. And she was one of those very sensitive people, which I hate to say this. I think people who are like that tend to get dismissed a lot by people around them. Like, oh, it's just, and something else. You're, you know, everything you're sensitive to. Maybe it's just in your head type of deal. She was one of these people. And she did find mold. And this was back when I was like, I you know, okay, sure, whatever. But she moved and the weight came off. So it affected, I don't know if it was her appetite or if it was water and inflammation. She did look like she was inflamed quite a bit, but it actually had an effect on her ability to get leaner. And she did seem like a different person after she moved. It was like things did change. And that's kind of what opened me up and said, well, maybe what she was saying was true.
Well, it affects your hormones. It makes you inflamed. It affects your stress levels, which affects cortisol, which makes you gain weight. So a lot of people who are living in mold or have had at least prior mold exposure can hold on to that extra weight. And then they have to clear it out before they can lose it.
Now, people with methylation issues are people that have issues with detox pathways, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a gene. What is it? The MTH?
Well, MTHFR is one of them.
Okay.
There's multiple genes. Actually, there's HLA-DR and DQ. It's like a haplotype for mold sensitivity specifically.
Oh, wow.
And you can actually test that. And that's why these people who have that will be very, very sensitive. And they probably have MTHFR gene mutation as well. So they're not getting rid of anything that they're coming in contact with.
Okay, wait. So it sounds like we should almost do that test first, then the P test. Like, so
no, I don't test people a lot for that because you don't have to have that to be sensitive.
Okay.
And so I think that for me, I'm like, first of all, it's not cheap. You know, none of this testing is cheap. It's not covered by insurance usually. And if you don't have that, you can still be very affected by mold. So I don't tend to do that. I will do it if someone asks me
Okay, so
to.
P still first.
I'll say this though, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I like testing for that mainly because it also affects your ability to absorb certain nutrients.
Yes.
Right. So if you have the HFR, then you probably want to supplement with or at least test to see if you have adequate B vitamins, or maybe supplement with the methylated forms of folate and
if you tolerate that. So this is the thing with genetic testing. We know the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, that's a good point.
And with these tests, like the 23andMe and all that stuff that we have now, they're great. And I had you guys do that.
Yes.
The HLA DR and DQ is not going to be on that test. So that's the one I was saying. I don't know that I would do that one, but just genetic testing is good. But you have to have a secondary test for some of these things. So if you have an MTHFR gene mutation, I'm going to test homocysteine in the blood to see if you actually need those methylated Bs.
Got it.
Some people don't. So some genetic mutations are not affecting you. And people get these reports and they're like, oh my gosh, I have all these problems. And you're like, well, maybe.
You want to know what's funny? I had Dave Asprey on the show and he was talking about his genetic testing, and he would not say on the show whether or not he had that because he said it could affect your insurance.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'm like, oops, because I've shared that I have that. So does,
Me too.
So does my wife. And he was all like, no, I don't want to say if I do or I don't.
Also skydive.
Yeah. I'm like, oops. Yeah, it's just a good one.
I've done that.
but yeah, because we both have that.
Yeah.
So I know my kids do, obviously, because both of us. Fun fact. I had I forgot who it was. I think it was Dr. Seed on. We talked about this, and I asked him. He said creatine was a good supplement to help because I think it's a methyl
It helps
donor.
with methylation.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that my one good thing about my insecurity as a kid of being too skinny and always working out, whatever. I've been taking creatine. daily since I
Yeah.
was 16 years old.
Which has probably helped your.
I have no
yeah.
symptoms of any of methylation issues.
Yeah.
I've always been fine. And I'm wondering if it has to do with the fact that I've been taking creatine since 1994 or whatever.
It does.
Okay.
It does. It's just as effective as B vitamins sometimes. Sometimes we need other things. Sometimes B vitamins are too much. Like I work with people so sensitive, they cannot even tolerate a B vitamin.
What happens?
Oh, wow.
They get very anxious. So you have to give them niacin, which is also a B vitamin, but they can't handle the B9 and B12. And you have to give them niacin to calm them down. And then you have to work with other things like maybe glutathione precursors if they can't even handle
Like
the
NAC?
glutathione. Yes.
Okay.
So it's just, and a lot of it is limbic system retraining. Like a lot of it is you're so amped up all the time that you can't tolerate anything.
Is this why they find a correlation between trauma and autoimmune issues,
Yeah.
or trauma and a lot of the things that you're saying?
Well, trauma is your body's way of keeping score, right? So we take trauma in and it has to go somewhere if you're not working it out. So it gets buried in the body somewhere. And for most people who aren't getting that out, it presents as illness. It will kickstart genes, like not every gene is turned on.
So great book. I read that book, The Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
And the theory, which is becoming more and more accepted now by mainstream medicine, because for a while they were like, no. But now they're like, yeah, I think this is what's happening, is that there's this natural cycle of trauma processing that we have to go through. And and by the way, the evidence for this are all of the rituals that we've had for thousands of years around traumatic events. So funerals and deaths and stuff like that. Like the reason why we have these rituals to begin with is probably because we identified a long time ago that there's a process that we have to go through. Otherwise, the cycle tends to get stuck. So it's like you have trauma, block it out, avoid it. It doesn't go away. It's stopped at this part of the cycle and it just stays there.
Yeah.
And then it turns into behaviors, abusive towards yourself, towards others, maybe substance abuse or pain, chronic pain.
Or feeling exhaustion. I mean, how exhausting is it to be around someone who's abusive? I mean, it's very exhausting. So like chronic fatigue, a lot of that has to do with trauma.
Yeah.
So that's why when I work with people, I'm like, you have to address all of this. It's not just a supplement. We have to figure out, is your body going to allow you to work on things? Because if you've got all this stuff going on, your body's on like defense mode all the time, you can't just start taking supplements. So there's a whole system to it.
I have a personal question on some level. We've been trying to kind of figure out, like Courtney has gone through a lot of different testing and stuff for hormones and has figured out she has, thyroid issues and, we've been able to kind of medicate that and whatnot. But there's this, and I first thought it was funny because it's one of these things we kind of mess with her first, like the kids and I, she's very jumpy, like to the point where, the dog barely makes a little chirp and she's just, we'll throw something in the air and it's like,
I think all wives are.
But it's like extra, like to the point where it hasn't been that before. And so, for me, like just hearing you talk about this in terms of limbic system and like, being able to process, and detox properly, like, I don't know if, maybe that's the route we look at in terms of where to go next.
So when you're very jumpy, you're on sympathetic overdrive. So you're in fight or flight most of the time. So she has to start doing like vagus nerve work, calming down her nervous system. And then that's going to affect hormones like cortisol. Then cortisol is going to affect the thyroid. So she's never going to fully be able to, manage the thyroid issue if she's not working on the things that are causing it. And there's, believe it or not, trauma alone could be the cause of certain autoimmune diseases. So
all joking aside, because I've worked with a lot of clients like this where they go to doctor and they tend to get dismissed or misdiagnosed. You mentioned dementia. What are the common misdiagnoses for people who have, for mold. You mentioned brain fog, so it could be like an extreme case dementia.
Parkinson's, dementia, multiple sclerosis.
Whoa.
Because it really affects your nervous system. So when I lived in mold the first time, I thought I had MS. I went and got a brain MRI. I was like, I have MS for sure. I was numb everywhere. My coordination was off. That's very common. So different things like that. And then different autoimmune diseases, but those are really happening because of this constant state of inflammation.
I wonder how many people are on anti-anxiety medicine or antidepressants because of something that they haven't solved.
Antidepressants are like the biggest thing that doctors who don't know what the answer is, they give you the antidepressant. And it is depressing to feel like crap all the time. So yeah, you're depressed, but you're not depressed because you have a chemical imbalance. You're depressed because you feel like shit because you're living in mold or whatever the situation is.
I tend, in my experience, and I've heard this as well, I don't know if this is true, but that women tend to get more dismissed by medical professionals than men. Is that because women are more sensitive to issues with detox, or is it simply because they're just not being listened to?
I think it's because men don't. So when I take on a new patient, I have an intake
We wait till we're
form.
dying.
You do.
We wait till it's an obvious problem.
Yes.
I'm fine.
When I do a form, it's like 0 is the least, 3 is the most. Women are like 3, 2, 2, 3, 2, like going down. Men are like 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0. What are you guys taught when you're young? You fall down, don't cry, suck it up.
Yeah.
So that carries on through your life. I mean, I can't say the same for when you guys get a cold, but when you guys have like a serious issue.
Studies show that we get a worse cold with the same virus.
But when you get something going on, you tend to dismiss it because that's kind of, in my opinion, what you're taught to do.
Yeah.
Women are not taught that. Women are we can express ourselves. We're like very in tune with our bodies. And so I think that it's just that if a man saying something is wrong, it's
probably
like,
really
oh my
bad.
gosh, there's a problem.
There's also this, which I think is also true, is that women are more primed to be vigilant than men are because threats are more threatening to women for obvious reasons, but also because women have to care for an infant or a child, and especially, and I saw this with my wife, you have a baby, those alarm bells they increase in sensitivity. Before I could sleep through different things.
Right.
And now it's like I'm heightened because my body's primed to be super careful because I have this little baby to take care of.
Yeah, and it's also our hormone fluctuations. Like we have a period, we get pregnant, we go through perimenopause, menopause. Guys don't really have that. So like estrogen works with a lot of different things and makes different things more aggressive. Let's take histamine intolerance, for example. If you have estrogen dominance, which many women do, you're going to push out more histamine. Men don't really have that going on. So women are feeling worse, but they're also talking about it more,
Yeah, and how long does it typically take a patient of yours to get to you? Because I would imagine you're not the first or second or third person. It's probably been a while before they're like, okay, I don't know what else this is.
Some people right away, just because functional medicine has gotten a lot more recognized, but typically it's like, I've been to this doctor. They want to divide everybody in parts. I have a gastroenterologist. I went to an ENT. I went to an endocrinologist where we just look at everything together. But lately I've actually gotten a lot of men who are reaching out because of their wives. They're seeing it and they're like, something's wrong with my wife. And they're starting to do all this research and they're not like buying what they're hearing. And they're calling, or vice versa. Women are, doing the same for their husbands or their spouses or whatever.
What signs are they typically seeing?
Usually it's like they'll say and this is probably because it's affecting the person also. Like my wife seems her moods are really high mood swings.
Well, that's got to not fly well. How do you bring that up?
Right.
Hey, honey, I called the doctor yesterday because you've been unreasonable lately, so I figured there's something wrong with you.
Like that's also something you can't really say. But no, more like my wife isn't feeling well.
Yeah.
Something's wrong. No doctors are giving us answers. And I'll have, pretty well-known people like reach out to me and tell me that. And I've had a lot of that recently. And then women always bring their husbands in,
That's no problem.
Oh yeah. They're like, something's wrong with him. He won't listen to this and blah, blah, blah. What do we do? But
if you are suffering from mold, are there things nutritionally that will exacerbate it, or are there things that we can do to make it better, like fasting or stuff like that?
Yeah, you mentioned gluten.
Well, gluten's inflammatory. Okay. So, but there's actually foods that are higher in mold. So like cantaloupe, like the rinds of cantaloupe can pick up mold. I'm sure you have probably seen that.
Yeah.
Grapes, I'm sure you've seen mold between grapes. Even strawberries sometimes. Like certain foods get mold on them quicker. But then mold is very tied to yeast. So you have to start thinking about things that feed yeast. So fermented foods, vinegars like soy sauce, peanuts. Peanuts are notorious for having a lot of mold the packing process. Like there's a lot of mold growing in there. Coffee. This is why there's all these companies now that are like mycotoxin mold free, because coffee is notorious for growing a lot of mold. So there's foods like that you can avoid, but you only want to avoid them if you know you have mold and you're like going through a protocol. You don't have to never eat those foods.
No, that's what I meant. Like if you, took the test and I have this right away, I'm thinking, okay, what are some things I should start to do food wise?
Yeah. We bought this, Jessica has coffee every morning, and we bought this container that you put the coffee grounds in, and then you suck out the air to help prevent. That works, right? Or that helps?
Yeah. Okay. But you have to, the company also has to have their own process, because just regular, like regular organic coffee and a regular non-organic coffee, it's going to have mold and mycotoxins. So you have to have like these specific companies, that I'll use only them, they go through a specific process to get rid of those mycotoxins and make sure that's not happening in the first place.
Isn't that how Dave Asprey blew up? Isn't it Bulletproof? Bulletproof was the first one that did that, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, he talked about it.
He talked about it a lot.
Yeah, I think he was one of the first.
Well, he didn't make coffee until now, right? Or no?
No.
That's his second coffee.
Yeah, Bulletproof is the original.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. So, and I believe that was what he did originally that made him so famous for it, because it was right at the beginning when people started to pay attention to that.
Yeah, and his new coffee actually has fulvic acid in it, which is a binder. So it can actually pull out toxins. Oh. It can bind to toxins and help you pull them out.
Oh, that's in Shilajit. Yeah, we have that. That's the Shilajit's high in fulvic acid.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's cool.
Very cool.
We'll be eating that every day now.
Yeah, we have been eating it.
But let me tell you something. This is very big, because everyone thinks, I have mold, I'm going to use a binder. Do not use a binder if you're not sweating and if you're not pooping.
Why?
Because
then it'll just stay?
Yeah, it will stay. So what happens is, we have bile. Bile takes toxins from the liver to the gut, and then we poop them out. Well, mold is very sticky. So mold does not let you drop it off at the gut. So then it goes back to the liver and back to the gut, back to the liver. Like it sticks in with the bile.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you have to like separate the two. So with a binder will bind to that mold and it will separate it out. And also you can use certain things that help the bile to keep moving, or ox bile, like different things that help with bile, depending on if you need that or not. But if you're not using, or if you're not pooping, if you're constipated, it's going to constipate you more, probably. It's going to grab it and hold on to it, and then it has nowhere to go. And I always say, like, a good test for sweating is, like, if you can sweat easily, or let's say you get in a sauna and you sweat within about 10 minutes, you're ready for a binder. If you can go in the sauna for 30 minutes and you don't sweat, don't take a binder. So
is that so? What if they try drinking more water and then trying again? Sometimes that means they're not drinking enough water, right? Okay.
It's various reasons, but binders are one of the number one ways you get mold out of the body.
Activated charcoal?
Yeah, there's different
that's
things.
a
I
binder.
like to use kind of a blend. You can even use fiber. Like some people are super sensitive. Chia seeds, flax seeds, psyllium husk, like those things are binders. So you can start there and then you can kind of graduate into charcoal and fulvic and humic acid and different things
Bentonite
like
clay?
that. Yep, bentonite clay.
Okay.
So those things will grab onto it, but you have to be able to get it out.
Is moldy cheese something that Justin would need to avoid if he had mold?
Yes.
Be careful with this question.
Really? That too?
Well, yeah, you don't want to add it. You don't want to add anything that has mold,
Of course.
to your body.
Even though
And
that's one that we would normally consume, but just if
if
you're already
you have
overloaded.
mold. Yeah, if you're overloaded.
Wow. What are signs in your house that you may have mold besides symptoms and smell?
Yeah.
I'm assuming water damage.
Any water damage. You see water damage or you've had water damage,
Assume there's
most
mold.
likely you should assume there's mold. You need to be having your HVAC unit tested very regularly. You know, like you need to get on a plan. Like every 6 months they should be out there. You should be using certain types of filters. There's all different things that you can do, but the HVAC unit is a dehumidifier. Like you need to be, it's humid houses are a big problem. So like my house was at 66% humidity. It did not feel humid at all, but it was. So like you can test that. You can test your humidity. And if a air conditioning company is coming out and they're servicing your HVAC, they're going to test those things for you. And they're going to make sure your filters are changed out and all that. So there's that. And then any smell. I mean, if you smell something, there's no way you don't have a problem.
Yeah. And like,
I swear, like having a conversation like this just makes me feel like as a species, we're just getting weaker and weaker.
yeah, like
It's like we're so like like all these nice things and amenities we have, but we're just getting weaker and weaker.
Or we just dealt with problems forever and never thought to like investigate it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna buy a new concrete house. That's what I'm doing.
Fully concrete.
Don't have any dust or humidity there.
soft spots on the wall too, or bubbles in
buckling in
paint.
the paint, wallpaper, flooring, any buckling in the flooring. If you see a little boop in your floor,
Yeah.
you gotta
So
have that looked at.
we had almost a situation because we had moved in the new place. We did everything you told us, which was a nightmare. At one point, I'm like, Becky, stop, because I think
know.
you're driving us crazy. But we did everything. And then I got a picture from my wife. I'm at work. I got a picture and there was a little bubble
I know.
in the paint somewhere. And I was like, no, dude, there's no way. I'm like, there's no pipes there. How the hell
Is this at the new house or the original
New
one?
place.
New house.
Oh, it's the new
I got the same one. I
But
got the
yes,
same
and I'm
picture.
like, no, there's no water there. How could that be possible? Like, whatever. But anyway, it was just because they had just painted the house and it had something to do with the paint.
yeah,
We had someone come in, inspect it, and there was no
exactly.
water
And that's
there
what you
whatsoever.
you just need to find out. Like, don't
Yeah.
ignore it.
What does that cost you to have like a bubble inspected?
Oh, it was nothing. The guy came and did it for free.
They
He was
can-
a friend of the owner.
Oh,
Yeah,
Oh, that's
but that wouldn't be anything. You just scrape it off yourself
Yeah.
and see underneath if
Well,
it's
just
wet.
be careful with that because
Why?
we don't want to mix things up in the air.
Oh, throw all the mold everywhere.
yeah,
How common do you think this is?
common. It's like I said, 80% of houses have had water damage. This is from water damaged buildings. It's not that you ate one moldy piece of bread and now your life is flipped upside down. Yes, you can have issues from that, but it's mostly that we're getting it from water damaged buildings. The mold in the water damaged buildings is causing mycotoxins. We're inhaling the mycotoxins and we're getting sick.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say like, so if let's say you had symptoms before and like you've been receiving this from food, you change up your food, but I mean, really the biggest offender is that it's like the at the house and it's this
Yeah.
constant exposure.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, you can't. You have to get. So this is the worst thing I hate saying, and this is what I had to say to you guys. You got to get out of there, and not forever. But you have to get away from the exposure. If you're constantly being exposed, you
can't
can't
get rid of it fast
better.
enough. Yeah.
No, you have to get away from the exposure. That's number one. And that means get away from it in the house. If you are remediating, try not to be there during the remediation process. If you have to be, make sure they're closing off your air units and all the things that can send it through the house. Like make sure they're taping things off. They're using the plastic, like I said, like there's a system to it if they're a good remediator. And, use the air doctor or whatever system you choose to use, like cleaning the air, all that type of stuff. You have to try to get away from it. Think about all your stuff. If it's like a carpet or something that it's just really hard to clean, just get rid of it. I mean, and then clothes you can wash, luckily. So you don't have to go buy all new clothes, but get rid of your mattresses, buy cheap ones in the meantime, whatever you have to do. Have someone come in. There are products you can use to clean off things like wood. And so you have to do that, like avoid it, avoid. So avoid it with the food at the time, avoid it with your exposure in the building. And then eventually you'll be okay and it will come out of your body.
I would think that the HVAC system has to be one of the worst things, right? Because
you got to replace the whole thing, dude.
Yeah.
It kind of blows it throughout the house.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So I would think that would be like one of the, and then I would think that somebody would have invented or came up with some sort of a filter that goes on every vent or something.
There is.
Okay.
And there are whole home filtration systems. But it depends on your budget. It's not cheap, So I just had to replace both HVAC units in my house. Because I had a leak in both of them. And
you spent a lot of money.
Yeah. Three companies missed it. And 3 air conditioning companies were like, no, you're fine. You just need to paint your ducts. There's a paint you can put on. It's like antimicrobial. And then a 4th company came out and they're like, no, you have leaks in both units. But my ducts were okay. It just depends. You have to have people come out and inspect and tell you what's going on. And then you have to do what they say.
What a pain in the butt.
It is a pain in the butt. It's not, but sometimes it's a past exposure. Sometimes you worked in a place for a while, a lot of government built, government housing, schools, that type of stuff is notorious for mold.
Yeah, this is one of those situations I would say where you're treating or working through the more common issues and things they're just simply not resolving. Nothing's resolving. I can't figure out repeated SIBO.
Yeah.
Repeated candida. I treated it, it's back. I treated it, it's back. Food intolerances, they come back. I treated myself for parasite. But why am I not getting better? Then I would say that's when you're
that's
okay.
the source, because the source has not gone.
And when you're inundated with mold, it really limits your body's ability to prevent things like SIBO or prevent things like SIFO, right? Fungal overgrowths or candida. So if it's coming back and back, so I've known people like this as well, where they had candida, they treated it, and it came back, and they treated it, and it came back. It should get rid of it, and then it stays away, type of deal. So it's basically if you're listening and you just have these repeated issues, and you can't figure out what the hell's going on, then the next step would be test your urine and then test your blood. For mold.
You don't have to test your blood unless you can't get it through the urine.
Yeah, if that doesn't give you a positive, you want to be sure.
Yes. So there's some, I'll do the Shoemaker protocol. Dr. Shoemaker was the first founder of biotoxin illness, and he did a blood panel. And then since then they've come up with other testing that's easier. But yeah, I'll do that on some patients if they're not showing it in the urine, and I'm like, I know you have it. And then I'll do the Shoemaker blood protocol or other things I can see on blood too. And I'm like, okay, you do. So, but another thing that's super important to know is, so it's basically support, avoid, support, bind, then kill. And that you have to go through antifungals to kill because where there's mold, there's yeast almost always, right? So that is an important part that a lot of people miss. They just take a binder and they're like, okay.
Yeah, but then they have candida or whatever.
Exactly. So, and then you have to treat your nose. So because we have colonization in our nose, and then when you're breathing in mold,
how do you treat your nose?
You spray. So you do antifungal sprays.
Like xylitol?
Well, xylitol's more of a biofilm disruptor.
Okay.
So that would be second to the antifungals.
Grapefruit seed extract?
You could do that. There's one I get on Amazon for my patients, Trigard. That one's good.
Okay.
But you can take thyme oil, oregano oil, olive leaf extract. You can put it in with saline and make your own spray. You can do different things. The thing with antifungals is they're super resistant. So you build up a tolerance to them, and then you have to move on to something else. You have to keep tricking them. So that's why this can be a year-long event if you have a lot of mold in the body. But you have to do systemic treating and then also nasal. So I do them together. Huh?
We didn't do the nasal one.
Wow.
So I got to get the nasal stuff then.
Yeah, but the thing is that with certain people, sometimes Aurelius is so young. Like he got out of there and it was like, remember when we started the antifungals with him and he was like having a very bad reaction.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, that's how I knew you guys had mold. I'm like, you can't take antifungals when you live in mold because then you're going to feel really bad.
Yeah, poor kid. He was unbearable. It was just terrible.
Yeah, it was too much on his body. So I'm like, okay, stop. Let's test the house for mold. We found out the issue. And then for him, because he's young, it just kind of goes.
Oh, he's got no gut issues anymore.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't have to go through all this. But a lot of people, they're reacting to a mold issue because they've already been exposed to a mold issue when they were younger and they didn't know. And then it makes them more reactive the next time. So then you have to start treating it. And it's really good if you know you have mold in your house and you get out of your house. That's a really good time to do a test on your body because sometimes it's just gone and sometimes it's not. And then you'll know, okay, do I need to work on this or not? But a lot of the times you do.
Wow.
So.
All right. Well, thank you for scaring the hell out of me.
Yeah. I'm glad we didn't talk about lice or bed bugs.
Jesus. One thing at a time.
No.
Wait, something really big is when you crave a lot of sugar too.
Oh, interesting.
Because sugar feeds mold and yeast.
Bro, there's a lot of these are for you, bro. You're sensitive to smells, skin stuff, allergies.
Oh,
if you're
Love
craving sugar, your body wants that to grow. It wants to feed the yeast. It wants to feed the mold so that it's going to tell you to eat sugar. So if you have like really weird sugar cravings.
Wow. All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Look into it.
I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, Becky.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. We'll have you on again.